Okay, welcome everybody. Today I'm gonna drive the contributors meeting. I'm Leo, and starting off with the triage and discussion for this week, we had Ishita and Nitish. I don't see them in the call, so I'll just skip that for now. Let's see if they joined. Oh yeah, there's Nitish. Hi Nitish. I was just running the section in the meeting where we asked the previous person doing triage and discussion if you had any topic you worth mentioning, you want to mention today. So please let us know.
Yeah, actually, I just want to get a feedback on one of this issue that I recently came across. I'll just put this link here. Um, I lem- wait, I'm trying to copy, but it's
You can put in Zoom chat, and I put in the
yeah.
doc
Let
if
me
you want.
just
Mhm.
yeah. This is the issue actually. I also try to put it in the docs.
Yeah, I can put in the doc, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, let me
Like I just want to get a feedback on this issue if because there have been a lot of enhancement proposals, I think, which are coming up, but just want to um, get some eyes on this one.
so you want to provide us a brief context on this?
Um, so, so basically, the proposal is eventually that um, that auto sync is generally disabled only when your sync policy is sorry, the automated field is not present. So in this proposal, they just want to have a field, something called as new flag proposals for enable, that is basically going to uh, enable the sync policy automation field. So if you see in the proposal, they have mentioned that we're going to have a new flag called as enabled. So if it is set to true, then the policy is basically going to be selected there. And if it's not, obviously the sync policy has not been set there. Depending upon that, there have been, I think, bunch of three conditions that were specified here. Like if the sync policy block is absent, then no sync policy will change. Then another condition was that if the sync policy is going to contain some automated field, then the default value of the enabled will be set to true. And then if sync policy enabled field has been set to false, then automatically it's going to stop the automated sync, even if the sync policy automated prune self is set to true. You know, so just want to get a feedback if this is something we should probably like. Should I basically ask the author to create a separate enhancement proposal and then present it in the meeting, or like how do you think we should go from here?
I don't think we need a more formal proposal than this. I guess what we need is just get traction on this. Usually goes by the amount of votes the proposal has. But in terms of if there's additional information required, or if a more formal proposal is required, I don't think so. I guess it's just a matter of getting traction and
There is a
prioritizing it.
similar enhancement on the similar lines that's regarding separate permissions to enable disable autosync.
Is this
That
an existing proposal, Ishita?
it's an issue, yeah, enhancement issue created by
Okay.
on. I've just shared the link. I could add to the talk too. So both of them are quite new.
So let me.
Yeah, I've
Both
added.
are quite new, you said? Ah, this is from Andrew.
Yeah, I think he's not there today.
He
Would I
is.
explain that one? Yeah.
So Andrew,
Hey, yeah, that's one of my items.
Oh yeah.
Like I've added like on a list for discussion today. So up
Okay.
to you. We can cover it like later, maybe like yeah. Basically, we can cover it now as well. But
but
basically, like
You agree with Ishita that this is pretty much similar to what the other proposal
Sorry, I
is?
got distracted.
It's
The other proposal is
There's an existing proposal, which is
no,
this one.
it's totally different. It's about airbag. My proposal is about airbag.
Okay, so then this doesn't seem airbag, is it? Oh yeah.
It's airbag. Like maybe I didn't explain it like all too well. Like maybe I should get an
Okay.
example, but yeah.
Okay, never mind.
It's about
Let's
like
get
right now you
back.
need update permission for application autosync enable disable through UI, and it's like very broad permission. So this is about like having a dedicated permission just for autosync enable disable.
So it's unrelated. Okay, never mind.
Yes.
We're gonna get back to you in a few minutes. Thanks.
Cool.
All right. So any other thoughts on this one? Anyone?
looks legit. There's no breaking change. I think that could be done without much impact. It's a valid proposal, in my opinion.
Two things I'm curious about are one, why does setting automated to null not solve the problem? I'm surprised that that doesn't allow you to get ops disabling explicitly. And the second question would be, how concerned are we about the confusion that may be introduced by having two different ways to disable automated sync, i.e., dropping the field versus setting enabled to false explicitly? I'm not too worried about that, but it does introduce potentially a little bit of confusion.
I assume when you disable autosync, you lose the value of whether prune or self-heal were enabled or not. So if you just wipe the object, if you want to re-enable autosync, you don't know if prune was enabled for that application or not.
Potentially.
Yeah, that's true. It's not very convenient. Like for example, like if you disable autosync, then like all flags are reset, and like you kind of need to re-enable them later. And basically, autosync on off is not very easy to manage with GitOps, for this reason. And also another issue I encountered at some point, I think when you do customize overlays, if you just put like sync policy nil, I don't think it fully works, but I don't fully remember why. Like for example, if you put like policy nil into overrides, it's just think it is gonna complain or like I don't remember anyway. But yeah, basically like TLDR, like from what I recall about this thing, I would be pretty much in favor of this feature. I think it's worth it and like would make people like life easier and like yeah.
Yeah, with customize, you'd probably have to have a delete patch. You might not just be able to set to null. I think I'm in favor of it. My only real concern is that we make sure and clearly document the behavior of removing the field versus setting enabled to false explicitly. And maybe say that the old way of marking it as disabled is deprecated. Do we want to make the automated field a required field or have it default?
I mean, that's a breaking change on the CR, so we need either a mutation webhook to do that change or bump the version, which is a much bigger scope. Should be another issue to deprecate the old field, in my opinion.
It's only a breaking change to remove it, not to deprecate it.
Oh yeah.
So I think we should, if we want to remove the old way of configuring having autosync disabled, then I think we should go ahead and get out ahead of that by documenting it as deprecated.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think we can just keep the old way because well, its migration can be like hard and like not everybody can do it like easily. So I think yeah, we just if the field is missing, we just treat it as off, and probably that's all.
Because
I don't see any like big problems with that, but maybe I'm missing something.
Because sync policy is not a required field, I think, so we will need to make that required, and then all the object would have sync policy defined.
Well, and maybe I need to think about it some more, but maybe what I'm thinking about is not making these fields required, but actually just instead of having them be pointers in the structs, have them just be plain old structs with JSON emit empty enabled. So you basically default everything out, and it's technically populated on the back end, whether you define it or not.
I was going to ask a question, but I think Michael just answered answered my concern right there. Yeah. Yeah, because the confusing part is like what happens if I don't have that field, right? Like if I just have it the old way. I think, and it reads. I needed to read it a few times, but it looks like the default behavior is like just the same default behavior. But I like your idea, Michael, about just making it a struct and just doing setting the default there.
Yeah. So
I
the
think that just
manifest won't change, only the backend implementation. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
And maybe it ends up being semantics, but I do think it's worth considering the documentation expressing it as, okay, there's always a value, but here's the default value. So if you haven't explicitly set it, this is the default versus, you know, maybe you just haven't configured a sync policy and therefore it's absent.
Yeah.
That's probably semantics, but maybe worth phrasing it that way. Yeah, I think I'm in favor of it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Nitish, are you okay with the outcome? You want to take this?
For sure. I for sure. Okay, I'll see for that.
Okay.
It's
All
also,
right.
you can
Yes.
tag it a good first issue. I don't think it's like there's not that much complex code involved.
Yeah. Not complexity, but yeah, paying attention on the documentation. Yeah. Done. Cool. All right. One more. Is this from you,
No, I think
Ishita?
this was the same one that Ishita mentioned just now.
Oh, the other one that Ishita mentioned? Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
that
sure. Okay, so this is a topic from brought by Reed. Okay, so let's select who's going to be doing triaging discussion next week. Any volunteers for primary and secondary in the call?
I can do secondary if someone wants to do primary.
Okay, I can be primary. It's been a while. Oh,
It's been a while for me, yeah. So there you go.
okay, cool. All right, with that out of the way, let's move on to the discussion section. And we have the first topic with Mike Finkel. Are you in the call?
I can talk about it if he's not
Okay.
there.
Doesn't seem like he is, but is PR that you got involved, right, Alex?
Yeah, so it's merging
It's merged. Okay.
3.0, but do we want it in 2.14? Because it's like a feature and we're kind of at the last wave of RC. But basically, it's a feature flag that allows to disable fine-grained inheritance. The only difference between 3.0 and 2.14 would be that in 3.0 is disabled by default, and in 2.14 it needs to be explicitly enabled. So it should be a no-op feature flag for 2.14, but it's still new code to introduce during RC6.
Or you said no up feature flag?
I mean, the code won't change the behavior.
Okay.
The flag will need to be turned on.
I see.
I would say, yeah, let's do it. At least for me, although for me personally, it probably doesn't matter as much because I use custom built images, but I think it's like, I guess security teams on various companies would be happy because specifically because this update permission for applications would like become much more restricted. And then specifically when people like use it for auto sync, enable disable. This is a good
Usually
feature.
we backport bugs or features that are really impacting end users. Are you aware if there are companies impacted by this one that warrants backport on previous versions, Alex?
I mean, for sure, it's what's it, Matt, I think. Matt's company needs it.
Okay.
And like everyone's gonna have to wait 3.0, so at least 3 months to get this feature.
Sure.
It's just people can still do a custom image if they want the feature, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of do we want this in the next version or not, because we're at the end of RCs.
Sure.
I don't know. I think formally it looks like it doesn't make a cut, but informally I would say I think we can make an exception for this one, in my opinion.
There is one highlight I'd like to make. So folks are asking us to avoid cherry picking as of now. So if we're cherry picking this in the the previous version that we had, the current version that we have, we need to wait for a few days until they
The RC is
allow it.
excluded.
Sorry,
The RC is excluded from the cherry pick freeze, so we're actually okay with this. Only active versions have a cherry pick freeze right now.
Oh, okay. The RC. Okay. If you want to backport this to even previous versions than the RC ones.
Correct. Yeah.
And is this the intention, Alex, or just the last version? How many?
Cherry pick that in the current RC.
The current RC. Okay. Okay. Then I guess it's all good.
Cherry pick this one, but there's a PR targeting. Yeah, the last one.
There's a merger. So it needs to be done manually. You did it already?
Last one. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I will review this one.
All right, thanks.
You want to review this, Michael?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, cool. Okay, thanks, Alex. Moving on, Currenton, are you in the call?
Yes, I am. We just
All right.
got to the office. Okay, can you hear me well?
Yes,
Yep.
we can hear you perfectly.
Perfect. Awesome. So to give you some context, so I'm Corentin. I work at Google on GKE Fleet. I'm also part of SIG Multi-Cluster. We introduced recently cluster profile.
You cut. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can finish it for him, or at least stall until he gets back. So Corentin, I've been just I'm a PM, right? Engineer at heart, but now I've crossed over the dark side of product manager at Google. I work on GKE, fleets and teams. Corentin is an engineer that is aligned with the work that I'm doing. He's contributed extensively to upstream SIG multi-cluster to help build the cluster inventory, cluster profile spec. I don't know if any of you are familiar. Are any of you familiar? No? Okay, so TLDR there is apparently we all have our own variants on lists of clusters, and it's a burden on customers to have to deal with a list per tool. And the idea here is that we can consolidate lists to an open source standard. Like it's a pretty mundane standard, if I'm being honest, but and so we built, we helped build this cluster inventory thing. And we are planning on donating some plugins that will kind of help generate Argo CD secrets from these cluster profiles, the labels that are on them, to do fancy things. And so Corentin, I think, is just introducing himself just to say, hey, I might need some help or some advice on like the appropriate like idiomatic way to help build generators and plugins. In fact, we do have some other folks from my team that have already built one plugin, but that's not through cluster profile. It's directly with our fleets and team service. Anyway, I think that's the TLDR here is Corentin's just introducing us, what our goal is, which is to expand Argo CD into cluster inventory, make it more accessible.
I think there was actually one more thing I wanted to introduce. So the plugins, I think there's good documentation, and like thank you guys for setting up plugins, and that's why also we're picking Argo CD kind of as the example when we want to do things, because it's so easy to leverage and plug our own things. So we want to do with things with cluster profile and all. But another thing I was considering is we've been using the declarative setup a lot, and we realized we kind of like having everything on the cluster, and we want to make that multi-cluster kind of experience similar to the single cluster thing. And something we've been looking at is defining the bundle of things, like whatever you'd want to deploy that today is in Git or an OCI image, maybe also leverage from YAML. So you could define like a YAML set of configs, and have your application set whatever source point to that YAML. So that would make setup, like when you're fully declarative, maybe more similar to a single cluster, and you could just leverage all the Argo CD features like progressive rollout that you're introducing, the syncing, the hydration, controller fights. So there was a bunch of features that you would still get even if you're not leveraging like a repo per se. So that's something I put in Slack. I wanted to get the temperature for before we go through potentially an enhancement proposal and all that. We have to admit it's like slightly different from the way you guys do things normal with repos, but I was keen on seeing the interest and if the use case resonated with you.
I have a question on when you say YAML, I'd like to understand better what you mean exactly by that. So you want the ability to provide Kubernetes YAML definitions while you're defining your Argo CD application sets / applications and provide that as a YAML at that point. Where this YAML is coming from?
Oh, so YAML is just it's a shortcut, I guess, for a KRM resource, a Kubernetes resource, like a CRD. That I would assume maybe Argo could support like a bundle CRD, big quotes, right? Like to be defined. The advantage is like when you don't have handy a Git repo or an OCI repo, so not having to go through the steps of setting those up, you could take whatever you would have put in those Git repos, like the structure, the file, right, with the deployment. And that's why I'm saying YAML, like usually they're deploying the YAML files, right? So whatever the deployment would be, the service, HPA, I mean, you name it, right? All those resources that they want on the end cluster, like the resulting, the thing they want synced. So all those things, instead of having them in a Git repo, I would take them all and package them as a CRD that I would be able to save on the same cluster as Argo and tell Argo, hey, look at this CRD. This is where my files are.
So
is this CRD is this a special CRD or any CRD that could group collections of resources? What is the CRD that you're referring to?
I think here it would be a new one likely, because I don't know if there is a standard one that we could reuse. So I would say it would be a new one that could cater to Argo's needs, especially like. But so yeah, that would be a new CRD. Let's say let's start with that.
Basically, instead of having Git as the database, you have etcd as the database.
Pretty much. At the end of the day, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, my immediate question is, and this is me just trying to understand, is why? So I mean, so that all, like, I understand all that. That sounds great, but like why? I guess that's my immediate question is why.
So I think a few things. We're trying to leverage all the features of Argo CD around the application set, and like hydration and the syncing and the pruning, like all those features that you already have. But we kind of want a more cluster-centric experience. So that's one. Yeah, and I think the second kind of goes back to the first one a little bit, but like for iteration and testing, when you're when you're single cluster oriented, you kind of want to edit on the fly. Maybe you would want to do this thing for testing, and you are in the cluster for Argo. You could put your config in the same spot, so that it could be a slightly different interface for the users, and then whatever repos are in front could be like foreign to that if they want to go into GitOps. But that way you separate the API and the GitOps aspects, maybe. That's another way maybe to see it.
I have a question. So it sounds like it's very similar to like, our argument that like, hey, I'm developing new stuff. Why do I need to like peer reviews for the code? Or like I want to like quickly iterate and maybe like test in stage and test in prod or whatnot. Hopefully like test in prod is limited. But then like, yeah, it's like basically like, is your security team okay with this, that you can just deploy something from like cluster YAML, which can potentially be edited by somebody without like any reviews?
I think it's a different feature altogether. Is like reviews. You could argue like with OCI, there's no such thing either, right? Because OCI doesn't have reviews and all that. So I don't think the reviews is a feature of Argo, let's say. I think the reviews is because like it's a GitOps practice, but you could differentiate GitOps as a mechanism for review, peers, enforcement, that kind of things, and the holding as a repo of config. Because I mean, even if my thing, you could still do a GitOps thing that syncs to like that drops the config in the cluster, and then Argo picking up, right? So I see more like an interface thing than a security mechanism pattern, I guess.
Yeah, I think your point is to not necessarily rely on external systems for definition. And so like in the chat, I brought up like, oh, you could have CNAB as a CRD, and then you could bootstrap Argo CD, Kubernetes, CNAB bundle in a fully, disconnected environment, with no connection to the internet, and it would be able to deploy everything basically from that OCI bundle, YAML as well as images. I think the first kind of thought that I have, Corentin, is if I'm deploying manifests, those manifests are going to reference images, so I have an external dependency, right? And if I have to be able to pull images, then I think OCI is the way. Like I already have to deal with images. I already have to deal with an OCI repository. So an OCI bundle gets it done. But if you want to have something that's completely on cluster, then I think, okay, CNAB as a CRD suddenly makes sense because now you have no external dependencies at all. You can do everything completely disconnected on the cluster.
Yeah, so just to comment on top of that, that's awesome. And I think that's going to help. That idea would help a lot of disconnected scenarios. Our scenario is not necessarily disconnected, just to be super upfront. Like we are talking about orchestrating work across n number of clusters, right? And instead of using sort of like this spray all method that we do with GitOps, where we use labels and all these fancy semantics to make sure that different configurations land in different clusters. We're solving the problem of having a component that we as a cloud provider provides that kind of informs Argo, hey, you know what, you should put this work here, right? And so in order to do that, we need like a central mechanism. So now we have this central mechanism, which is in some consensus of, or it's almost like meta control plane clusters, if you will. And I think what we're trying to do is figure out a way to take this collection of configurations that represent a workload and represent them on that meta control plane, so it can then directly inform the resulting application, what configurations it should sync to those clusters, assuming that those clusters still have access to the image repo that it needs to pull stuff down, right? So it's like this, it's a special meta control plane kind of scenario. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
To also react on what you were saying, Dan, I think similar to what Nick is saying, I see it as a Kubernetes thing, right? So Kubernetes already depends on images, right? If you do a deployment. So I see it kind of in the same way where you'd still depend on images, yes, but your config stays more local, maybe.
Let's for the sake of time, I know we have other topics, and I know Leo's going to push us on, but Nick and Corentin, I'll help you set up on the Argo calendar a meeting to discuss this, and we'll invite. I think there's a lot of interest from Michael and Christian and some other people that are here who would be interested in just kind of brainstorming this discussion. So I'll help you. Just ping me on the CNCF Slack, and I'll help you. Nick, I'll actually help you, not just say that I'll help you and then never get around to helping you. But you tell me when you want the meeting, and I'll put it on the Argo calendar, okay?
Yeah, Dan's like that human that you asked out on a date and said yes, but then never answers the follow-up as to when.
Look, it might take 6 months, it might take a year. I'll eventually go on that date.
As long as you pay the bill. Wait, what?
Yeah, that's right.
One thing I'd like to request, Corentin and Nick, is if you guys can provide some sort of a formal proposal with more details on how this is going to look. Right now, it's just a thread in Slack, so kind of hard to follow the whole idea. So if you can just have a GitHub issue describing exactly what you're trying to do, how the Argo City application will look like, if there's change in the Argo City application CRD, how the application set will collaborate with this. This helps driving discussions, right? With clear examples and how the contract's going to look like in different cases. This is very, very helpful, especially in this case where we're discussing something totally different than Argo CD was doing.
So GitHub issue a markdown doc is the way you do it, or
yeah,
that's good.
Sounds good.
And so that'll be like we can have kind of a brainstorming session.
We can iterate on that, yeah.
And the output would be a proposal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was the point of that meeting, is seeing if there's an appetite to discuss further before I invest in writing this thing. But yeah, since this is good discussion, we'll invest in writing this. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks. All right, moving on. We have a few topics from Andrew.
Yeah, I'll turn it around a little bit. So I'll start with the last one because I just briefly mentioned this is like a PR for UIs that needs a review. It's been sitting there for a few months. Basically, it adds a sync wave column to like sync operations, like summary. So yeah, just like asking, like bringing to attention that, hey, can somebody please like take a look?
This one?
Yeah, I don't think there is any like any concern or anything. It just like seems good to think there has been already some like communication on like and some like reviews happening. Just needs like formal approval and merge.
Okay, it's UI related. Did someone from UI team review this? No, it doesn't seem so.
Well,
Okay.
I'll take the opportunity to note that if anyone knows anyone who has a bunch of UI experience and is interested in contributing to open source, we have had fewer resources lately for that than we have in the past. So would love to bring some new folks on.
Yeah. I'll try, but we probably need to hire at least one more UI engineer. I'll see what headcount situation looks like, and I need to also motivate people to like get there. But I'll see. I'll like try to bring this up with existing UI engineers too. And like I tried with one person, but she was not like, as interested. But then there are like two more people who might be. She mentioned. So we'll see. And yeah, but basically this PR, I think it doesn't strictly require like a big of UI knowledge. I think it's relatively straightforward. But yeah, like I don't know if somebody can like just like try to take a look because it's pretty small. Yeah.
can have a look.
Keith is in the call. Keith, would you be available to take a look at that one?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Keith. Okay, you have another one. Andrew?
Since we already touched base on this example to see
Just really quick, if you're interested in joining a meeting on that topic of source bundles and stuff, just throw your name on the doc, and I'll just make sure that we throw you into the invite for the meeting that gets created.
Cool. Thank you, Dan, for organizing this. Okay.
I think I did. Let's go with the second one because I think first one we already discussed. First one is more like I added commands from previous meeting, but this one is basically like so you know how like you need update permission for applications to like enable Zephyr sync. So this is about setting up a like specific permission called like an auto sync. It's basically a new permission keyword. Which is like a bit of overhead, but I think that's probably a good practice and adheres to security principle of least privilege. And issue it resolves is like, for example, if somebody has permission to update the app, they can update the Git source and like pull in some like random code essentially. And we kind of want people's flexibility to like enable, disable auto sync, but we don't really want them to like go without GitOps and like tinker with like application.
What I'm missing here is how the RBAC is going to look like. So when you say keyword,
but basically it's like same thing. Imagine RBAC for like application update. So you have applications, comma, like update, comma, and like more specific stuff. Here it would be like applications, comma, auto sync, comma, and like more stuff.
There's a lot of different fields in the applications that we might want to individually allow to update or not, and it's going to be a mess if we start to add just RBAC for each different field. We can do it for all the fields, but we get another proposal to achieve that would be to have an action that does the toggle of autosync config. So you can actually leverage the RBAC of actions, and the action could just take the actual autosync manifest, store that in an annotation on the application itself, toggle the value, and submit that manifest. And then when you toggle it on and off again, then it takes what's in the annotation, toggle the value, and submit that manifest. So you have your RBAC. It's a relatively small change, but we still have a problem where there are a lot of fields in the application.
I understand.
There's no granularity.
I think one note though is autosync is kind of special because it has its own like UI buttons and everything. So I don't think other fields really have as much, which are like easily editable fields. So I mean, except like if you just edit as JSON or whatnot or YAML.
It fits the action use case more than a manifest update, in my opinion.
Okay. Let me like change this and like explore like how to do it with action. I think action also makes sense. I think like I say like action RBAC seems nice, and we can just like use existing RBAC, but like maybe use a bit more implementation. Okay, cool. So I think
real quick on this one, would you be willing to go back through existing issues and find other requests for finer grained app spec permissions if there are?
I'll try. I believe even this one might have been brought up, but either the issue was closed or I just didn't put the right keywords or whatnot. I couldn't find anything. But yeah, I will take a look.
Cool.
Okay. So all right, for the sake of time, I'll just ask for the first one. Like please, when somebody like take a look at this issue and PR, like basically I think this like I put examples in the issue, and then like for example, since we like need auto sync to like work properly, I think still the direction which I chose seems like better than like having like two syncs, one with replace, one without replace. PR is like it's not super complex. It's about this always never and like So yeah, we can follow up on Slack. Yeah. Okay, cool. And let's move to some like Michael's topics then.
Yeah. All right, Michael, we have 2 minutes.
Cool. I'll skip my first one. People can click the link if this looks interesting to them. Just comment on the issue. The last one's more interesting. I think that it's time for Argo CD to advertise an opinion on secrets, specifically that we think CMPs like AVP, Argo CD Vault plugin, are not the best way to go for secrets, and that people should rely more on external secrets operators and Kubernetes CSI, stuff like that. So I've put up a PR for the docs. Please take a look and let me know what you think.
Oh, it's a dot PR. Okay.
This
External secrets operator done.
Yeah.
Just yeah. All right, next one.
Will potentially guide like how we deal with issues where people pop in and they're like, oh, I want Helm post template operators to inject secrets, and we'll just link back to this doc and say, well, that's not really a priority for us. So don't just review the docs, but review the concept of moving that direction with Argo.
Is there I was thinking about this, Michael. Is there any use case for operators to inject secrets? Because the main reason that people use the Vault plugin, I think it's first out of ignorance, maybe, but second, there are a lot of people that they're gonna be so pissed to hear that. Second, there are a lot of people that are like, oh, I just need to get a value. It's not even necessarily a secret. I need to get a value added as an argument into this container. And no, it's scenarios where you can't use a secret. Scenarios where you can't get the value from a secret. They need to add the value as like a label or something, right? You can't do that from a secret. Is there some use case for having value passes from config maps or something that we could add in that would cover their use case? Or do we just want to be like, hey, it's not a great use case, like engineer differently?
Yeah, so there have been proposals and even code written for Argo CD, basically doing Helm lookups, but it's an Argo CD native feature instead of a Helm feature. And then we allow the user to inject values from arbitrary config maps or secrets or whatever into whatever hydration tool they prefer. I'm not fundamentally opposed to that. I think that it tends to be easier than telling people, okay, well, your CRD just needs to support a secret ref, or your controller needs to add this feature. Obviously, those are heavier lifts. On the other hand, introducing an entirely new source of truth for Argo CD, i.e., everything that's on the destination cluster, wildly increases the complexity of the code and the complexity of thinking about how deployments are done. So I'm pretty resistant to going that direction, despite the fact that it's a lot of work to go the other direction.
Yeah. Okay.
Distributes that work.
In any case, I don't think it changes this PR. I think let's get that merged. And I was surprised that I when I reviewed it, I was like, why is this a draft? This thing's good. Let's go.
Cool. All right. I will take a look as well, Michael. But yeah, sounds good. Sounds like a good idea. All right. With that, we're on time, and with that, any last minute topic, someone? I see
it's not really a topic, but I wanted to mention, he is a strong backend engineer, but like Teddy Whale would be like from Verkada would be like joining contributors group. He couldn't make it this meeting, but I hope he can make future ones. But he already like was very interested and very motivated for a few tickets. I started ramping him up, and in particular for this like auto sync stuff, he'll probably like work on it.
Cool.
So yeah.
Thanks, Andre. All right, thanks everybody, and see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.